Hello, and welcome to a new episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. I am your host, Katerina Burenova. Each week, we dive into a blend of topics that resonate with the soul. Whether you're an architect enthusiast, have a passion for Wanderlust, want to discover holistic approaches to rejuvenate your body and mind, or are intrigued to learn about Vastu Shastra with a modern approach, you've come to the right place. Join me as I sit down with inspiring, like-minded women from various walks of life. We will delve into their journeys to discuss the challenges and moments that define their paths. So sit back, relax, and let the spark of positive energy ignite your curiosity. Hi, it's me, Katerina. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to share with you something that can change the trajectory of your life. If you are ready to start your own architecture firm but are feeling overwhelmed by where to begin, I understand, because I felt the same way when I first embarked on my entrepreneurial journey. This is why I have created the ebook, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. This comprehensive workbook contains everything I wish I had known before starting my own firm. From building a solid business plan to creating your brand, The Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm offers a step-by-step guide tailored to your timeline, whether you're launching your firm today, next month, or in a few years. Dive into essential topics like financial planning, organization strategies, and how to secure your first client, all in one convenient resource. That's right, you don't have to spend hours researching. I have done that for you so you can focus on building your business. And that's not all. With your purchase, you'll also receive an exclusive meditation for business owners, mindfulness tips, a crystal guide for support, and gratitude exercises to help you stay focused and positive throughout your journey. Turn your dream of having your own firm into a reality with the Mindful Blueprint for Launching Your Architecture Firm. Click on the link in the show notes to get your copy today. Now, let's dive into the episode. Today, I am joined by Krista Marcavecchio, licensed architect, founder of Make Your Marco, and architecture coach. Krista is helping architecture students master their skills and understand what it is that architects actually do. She offers coaching classes that create a safe space to ask your dumb question and to help you feel supported as you navigate through your architecture career. Krista, welcome back to From the Honeycomb.
Thank you so much for having me. This is so awesome to come back for a second time too. And it's almost been about a year to the day.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor. And it's such an honor to have watched you grow through this year also too.
Thank you. And you as well. It's been an honor. And I think the biggest thing is this time I got to introduce you as a licensed architect. Which I made sure to put that in the intro because we finally got to introduce you as a licensed architect.
I know, been a long time coming, so thank you so much for that. It means like the world, so thank you.
Oh, I get it. No. I mean, I don't get it because I didn't go through what you went through, but yes, I'm glad that you're licensed now. You got that architect. You got that big A.
I got that RA. Put it on my fridge and everything.
Exactly. Well, Krista, as you know, we begin every episode by sharing something that we are grateful for in the present moment. So what are you grateful for?
I thought about this for a second right before you hit record, and I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to say. Kind of counterintuitive, but I'm so grateful for my mistakes up until this point, and any mistakes that are to come, because that is the only way that you grow. It is the easiest, fastest way to learn what not to do next time. And as long as you're learning from your mistakes, then I say make them away.
Mm-hmm. No, that's so true. Like, I think reflecting on the mistakes that you've made, because like sometimes it's like you could be like, oh, well, I wish I could go back in time and, rewrite whatever I did. But it's like, but that wouldn't bring you to where you are today and like into the person who you are today. So I think that's a really powerful thing to say and to reflect on and to accept, especially.
Yeah, so thankful for just like everything that's happened in this past year. I mean, how fitting that we're sitting down a year later and can reflect on all the mistakes that I've made in the past year, learned from, and all the mistakes that have come prior to that, because I for sure wouldn't be sitting in front of you as who I am today if it weren't for every single thing, every choice I've ever made, every action I've ever carried out, whether it was right or wrong. And who's to say what's right or wrong too? So.
Yeah. No, for sure. Well, I won't go too deep into the details of your background in architecture, since I'll provide a link in the show notes if anybody listening wants to listen to the episode from about a year ago where we talk about architecture school, what that was like for you, even exam process. What I want to talk about now is your coaching program, because what you're doing is amazing. I ended up attending one of your courses, one of your classes, and I was blown away by the content that you were able to provide in an hour, especially because, and you touched on a point, is in architecture school you may not learn what a full CD set looks like, or like how does an architecture firm work. And really that experience, you gain that when you work at a firm. But like in any profession, everybody wants work experience before you start working somewhere. And architecture school gives you like some sort of knowledge, and it all depends on what program you went through and what school and all of that. But the transition from academia into the profession is that bridge. Some people drop off that bridge.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, to go back and plug you, I just today, this morning, finished your ebook. So if your listeners do not have your ebook, they 100% should. And I want to highlight something that you were talking about in your ebook a bunch, which is have a mentor. That is super, super critical. And I think that throughout my career and profession, I've been lucky enough to have really great people in my corner who, when prompted and when I asked the right questions, when I figured out how to ask the right questions, were more than happy to help me. And even before that, they were more than happy to help me. But I think that that is the part of my career that I've been really lucky about, is to have those people in my corner. And for the most part, especially, and a lot of the students that I have conversations with daily don't have that type of person in their life. And even more so in today's world, as opposed to when you and I were going through school and like landing our first jobs in the field, a lot of people are completely remote now. So it's not even like you can be in the office and just go through a set and look at the red lines together and really like dive in and ask questions. So there's like this whole other veil that's in front of you of trying to break through the walls of being a new person in an office, not having the experience, having the nerves of being the new person in an office, not having people around you maybe necessarily who have the skills to teach you. And so finding a mentor, and especially someone that kind of can walk through your career with you from like day one. That's why I like to give students that are first year, second year, third year's a little bit late in the game for me. I like to be with them throughout their profession to really like hone in on who they are as an architect, as an aspiring architect, up and coming through school, like undergrad. So that's super important to have a mentor. So get her ebook if you don't have it already.
Thank you for the plug. And it's so funny. I'm actually scheduling a coffee date with my mentor. We've been texting back and forth today. So that's so like perfect because it's having some sort of mentorship, some sort of guide, someone you can, like you say, like ask those dumb questions too. It's also because sometimes in the office, you don't have the time to get taught something or to teach someone. That could be because billable time, right? It's the billable time on a project. The firm also has to take into consideration, okay, we're going to train someone. It's an investment. And I think some firms drop the ball on that, on, hey, you do have to take some time to teach this newcomer, this new generation as well. And it does definitely take a certain personality to be able to teach someone. I thankfully feel like every place I've worked at, I've always found, it wasn't always my boss. It actually was never my boss. I found someone at every firm who had the patience to help me, who I could ask the questions. But it's like, and I feel very, very fortunate and lucky for that. But that's not the case for everybody. And you brought up a good point about remote work, because the call I came on for your coaching program was, there was a guy, student, I don't know, I think he was a 4th or 5th year. And he's like, yeah, my first internship was remote. And I'm like, what? Like, blew my mind that they even would allow you to have an internship as a remote, like, how are you going to learn anything? That like blows my mind that you could even have a remote internship being your first one.
I completely agree. And I was in the same boat. I mean, that was the first time I was learning that as well. And really, or for him specifically. And just, it blows my mind. It blows my mind, really, to be honest with you, that architecture schools don't encourage students to get actual hard experience. And that they, because the way that I see it too is, as a student, and this is a lot of what I talk about, is as a student, you don't know what you don't know. So if a firm is allowing you to be remote, as a student, you're like, awesome, you're going to pay me to sit from my computer screen and learn architecture. This is great. Not realizing that you'll never learn architecture that way. You'll never learn when from the get-go, you're already at kind of a disadvantage, because in a sense of work of the actual field and working in the office, you already from day one are trying to prove yourself. And that's the difference with working with me and working with a coach and working with a mentor, is that it is a learning environment. I don't expect you to know anything when you walk into class with me. When you walk into an office, you have to prove yourself. They've just hired you and they're paying you, and you have to provide work and perform your now job. And so that is why I feel strongly about offering a space that is, come ask your dumb questions. Let's get real. Let's dive in. Don't feel silly. You don't have to prove anything to me. I'm going to assume that you know absolutely nothing, and please come with your dumb questions. I think that really fosters an environment for actual learning, and not, and like, even though it is remote, and some students I will try to meet up with, you know, I'm on Long Island, so I'm an hour from the city. So my school, I commuted to my school. So all of my students that are at the school, I can obviously go there, and I can go to the city campus. So I do encourage actual in-person learning, but even still, over the digital screen, I can provide you more help, because you're not trying to prove yourself to me. We can work through things together. So come to class. If you've never been to class, come to class. Shameless plug already.
Yes. No, plug away, because I think you've kind of also created a niche of bridging that gap, but you are going above and beyond that in a way where you're going into schools, going into the first and second years and wanting to follow them on the path. And I think that's definitely something that is going to be really helpful, because even architecture school is like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, like, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, like, this is a whirlwind. And to have someone to help you navigate that is especially important, because I think that is really important in the development of like the future generation. And I think one thing, and I was having a conversation with someone about this recently, is I think it's also going to benefit you, because you're going to be seeing what the incoming generation of architects is learning, what their questions are, what their thought process is. You've got AI, that's part of the equation now. That wasn't part of the equation when we were in school. So you're going to grow as an architect, I believe, as well, by mentoring, you know, your mentees, because you're going to get a different kind of perspective.
I totally hear you, and I couldn't agree more. This is another mission statement of mine, if you will, that I lead with, is I am very aware that the students that are in school right now, as we speak, that are first year, second year, third year, are people that could potentially come work for me when I have my own company. You can come work for me that are in school right now. And so the environment that I provide for students, and the type of result that I am looking for a student to leave my class with, is someone that I will want to hire. And I see it in the firm more so when I worked in commercial, when we were the company was bigger, so we would hire a lot more interns versus where I am now. But when we would hire a lot more interns, I would see people who are either still in school or fresh out of school, and they had just very, very, if any, skills whatsoever. And I am kind of saying that with like sugar-coated ish. You know, they really just didn't know what they didn't know. And so it was then, which was at this point kind of a while ago, that I started realizing, wow, these are the students that are going to come work for the firms. These are the students that, this is where I was just a few years ago. And I didn't have the skills, and I don't ever want to see someone go to an office and try to be hired with those little skills. And I certainly want to make sure that someone that would be coming to me to work for me has the type of skills that I would expect them to be at.
No, absolutely. And it's good that you're thinking about like who you could hire as well. I see that little bit of that manifestation foreshadowing for you as well. But can you share with us then, what was your experience during school? Did you have internships then? Like how? Yeah, I did too.
I did. And this is kind of, for anyone that doesn't know specifically my background, I have 2 degrees. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. And a lot of people say to me, oh, what a waste. You know, you spent 4 years of your life getting an undergraduate degree. And I say to that. Absolutely not. Because the thing that I left that school with is this blaringly obvious fact of I will never go to school again without a job, a paying job lined up already for me, a full-time position. No questions asked. I don't care how hard it's going to be to land the job or how misaligned the job is. I will never graduate school without another job. So when I went back to school only a semester after graduation for architecture, I pretty much started looking for jobs right away as soon as I could. So I went to the career fair my second year, actually, which, if you're familiar with architecture school at all, is very, very young, especially in a 5-year degree. It's very young to go and look for a job, only 1 year barely into your architecture schooling. But I tried for it, and I wound up not getting the internship that year, actually. And partly maybe because I did not have the skills, and I knew that I didn't. It was very, very obvious when I sat down for my AutoCAD test that I had no clue what I was doing. So a year later, I actually wound up going back to that same office and trying again and getting that internship. So I started working in an architecture office as a third-year architecture student at that point, which, funny enough, was actually yesterday was my in-office anniversary date. So June 6th, 2016 was my very first day in an architecture office, and I graduated in 2018, just to put things into context. I had another 2 years. So yes, I interned while I was there. Long story short.
Nice. I think that's a huge aspect, and I know you briefly touched on it at the beginning of, schools don't, I feel like there's been someone on my podcast, and I can't think of who right now specifically off the top of my head, who has mentioned that they interned during their program, and that was the first I ever heard of it, where the school encouraged it, and it was part of like a prerequisite or whatever. Like, while you did studio, you also had to work, which I thought was absolutely mind-blowing, because I'm like, no, my school was, most people, I don't even know where I got the idea from, because I know my first year, between first and second year, I worked at a hot dog place, so that was not that was not, but I learned customer service, I will say, at that job. And I don't know why I didn't go straight into architecture. Maybe because I felt like I didn't know enough, that I could be of value. That's probably what it was. It wasn't until my second and third year I got an internship, but it was from a family friend, and it was in the Czech Republic. It was in Prague for the summer. Now, that was a learning curve, because I speak fluent Czech, but I don't speak architectural Czech, where I was like, I don't even know how to say floor plan. Like, how do you say elevations? Like, I'm like, I don't know, the side of a building, I can say that. Like, you don't know that vocabulary. And then, by third year, I had done an internship back in California. And then fourth year, I ended up actually dabbling in an interior design firm where I got that job on an accident, but that's a whole nother story. The interior design firm shared an office with an architect, and I thought I was calling the architecture firm. I called the interior design firm instead. And they're like, yeah, come in for an interview. And I was like, awesome. And then I was like, yeah, but she said the boss's name. And I'm like, that's not the, I was like, I don't know, whatever, I have an interview. And I ended up getting a job at the interior design firm, which ended up being so much fun. It was a great group of people, and I got to learn kind of what does an interior designer do, what's expected. I was also the CAD person on the team, so whenever architects sent in their plans, I was the person who dealt with that, who drew in the furniture pieces, made sure things fit, and ended up working there. So that was kind of good. But definitely advocating for students to get internships, that's where I'm going with this, is during school, is making sure that they get some sort of work experience. And the biggest thing is someone has to take a chance on them, especially that first go around. And that's like, you got to find someone who's willing to do that.
That actually gave me chills. That's so funny. So I wound up, preach, amen. I couldn't have said it better myself. So this is kind of a weird fact about me, and I have been told actually by my colleagues that I gotta let this go. But to this day, I feel indebted to that boss that took a chance on me, because I knew that I didn't know. Eventually, in the beginning, I didn't know that I didn't know. And then maybe a month in, when I was like, wow, I really don't know what these people know around me. I really fish out of water here. I started to realize wow, this person really took a chance on me, and I don't know if other people will have that type of opportunity. I'm so thankful for it. So to this day, I am thankful to that group of people, the few people that advocated to have me come on board with them. I don't know what it is that they saw, because it was not scale, I'll tell you that. So I'm indebted to them and thankful that someone took a chance on me. And then to your point, yes, the most common objection that I get from students is, I'll get an internship when I graduate. I'm only a third year. I'll get an internship when I graduate. Or I have a family friend who's an architect that says that they're going to take me in with them for a day. Or I don't have time for an internship right now. Or I'm working at a hot dog place.
Yeah.
Same thing. I worked at I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings for 6 years. And I worked simultaneously at Buffalo Wild Wings. And I also was working at a catering job because they paid great money. And I was interning and I was going to school full time and I was commuting, it was a lot. But the most common objection that I get from students is, I have no time. I don't need an internship yet. I'll get one when I graduate. And I'm like, the last thing that I advise you to do is wait until you graduate to get into the field. That is going to be the place that you realize that school is not the important thing, and the office is where you will learn to prioritize what is important in school, because that's going to be the thing that lands you the job and that makes you the money. Unfortunately, when you really extrapolate what school is you're paying them. So when you flip the script and you turn the tables and you want to get paid for your skills, well, you have to go out into the office and figure out what skills school is teaching you that will get you paid. And that's what we talk about in class. I love to go into mindset while we're in class. So I kind of like try to just shift that mind frame, because I know that school is giving you the opposite, rightfully so. I understand why they do that, but it's just not reality.
No, absolutely. And then, so what are you seeing students are coming to you with questions? Like, because I was just thinking, I was doing the math in my head, because even COVID, I know, kind of screwed up for architecture school, even just anybody who was in class 2020, 2021. That was difficult, which I guess at this point you may not have a lot of those students. But what is something that you're seeing students are coming to you with questions about?
Great question, great segue. The most often thing that I see for questions from students is AI questions,
Yeah.
3D modeling questions, 3D program questions, and rendering questions. Those are the things that I get the most of, which is the funny part of what I do, because those are the epitome of what I say is not going to be the thing that makes you money. I have not touched a rendering. I have not touched a 3D program. I have never touched AI in my now almost 9 years in an office. I have pretty exclusively worked in AutoCAD, and not one single student that I have ever worked with has a level 2 AutoCAD experience, which, again, like, it's a soft place to land, and I want you to come to me and ask them questions. But a big part of my challenge as your coach and as your mentor is to break through those walls and try to explain why rendering, AI, 3D, why that type of stuff is not the moneymaker. The moneymaker for you, especially as an intern coming into an office, is productivity. So the most important thing that you can do, and the best way that you can get yourself into an office and into a field, is to make yourself hyper productive, really great at drawing, figure out what makes your boss money, and then get really good at that. And I'm going to tell you now, the secret sauce is that it's not renderings that makes your boss money. It's actually getting drawings to the field if you're going to be a licensed architect. That's what makes us money, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's like not the hard skills. Like, it's great that you know the certain software. That's very important. But it's those soft skills of, can you work on a deadline? Can you work with consultants? Can you present to I mean, you're probably not presenting to a client meeting as an intern, but you're going to have to eventually, or you may have to, you're going to sit in on meetings and take notes and things like that. Note taking. Are you good at taking notes? Like, did you cover all the information? That's a lot of it too, is it's a lot of the soft skills of not just, like you said, knowing the rendering. And I'm someone too who, in architecture school, I didn't really get into the 3D renderings. Thankfully, like my studio, we did all AutoCAD, and we dabbled a little in Rhino. I could not grasp those 4 screens or whatever it is. And I just was like, I don't think anybody in our class grasped it. I know people used Grasshopper. Like, SketchUp is the one 3D that I like to work in, because it's just simple, easy, and I end up just like sketching over it. I end up doing, so I've combined like 3D renderings with hand sketching, and that's kind of what's been working for me. But I don't see the need to also pay for another 3D software. And like Revit, is actually Revit was pretty cheap. I think it was like $60 a month. It was ArchiCAD that was like 3 something. And I'm like, that's like a third of my monthly expenses. Like, I can't do that. And you start to think about that. And there's so many programs, but that's a whole tangent about entrepreneurship. But going back to what your students are asking for is like the renderings and AI. I think it's that mindset. And I noticed in architecture school as well is you always see the kid with the coolest rendering and you're like, oh my gosh, she's going to get an A or she's going to get an A. Like they have like the coolest renderings and oh my gosh, like it'd be like, because at the end of my school, we were doing skyscrapers, which was not at all what something I was interested in, but it was these cool renderings and these skyscrapers. And I was like, and I would look at my stuff and I'd be like, mine's just an elevation and a section. And like, I was like, this is lame. Like I'm probably like going to get a C or something. But the thing is those people that are really good at renderings just end up working for rendering companies or rendering departments in architecture firms, and you're not really doing architecture. You're turning architecture into those renderings, but like you said, that's not going to make you the money, especially if you end up wanting to have your own architecture firm. You're going to have to learn how to, do architecture, how to get a CD set, which is something you highlighted in the class that I went to, is getting a CD set together, which is something we also don't learn in architecture school because no one's building our projects. So we don't have to tell the contractor how to build it. It's make believe. It doesn't even, I mean, some schools, some artsy schools, you may not even have to stand up, So which that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, I'll leave it at that. So just reminding yourself that the kid with the good rendering, just because he has a good rendering or she or he has a good rendering, doesn't mean that they're going to be a great architect.
Amazing point. Yeah, I think that to go a step further in terms of getting the most common question from students be, how can I be better at rendering? How can I incorporate AI? How can what's this 3D program and that 3D program? And again, I understand where the desire is coming from, because to me, what that is responding to is clickbait. It's today's trendy stuff. It's what's new. It's always what's pushing the envelope, what's cool, what's conceptual, what's like getting all the hype. I understand it. It's cool. It's cool for me too. It's cool to read those articles. I love that. Who doesn't love to scroll through Instagram and see the AI produced, aquarium with the trees in it and all that? It's cool. It's super cool. Yeah. It's not what makes you money. Yeah. It's not real architecture. It's literally, it's not real architecture. It's artificial intelligence in architecture. And that, unfortunately, is not going to be the thing that makes your boss money. And some bosses will also get caught up in the clickbaity stuff. They want to see cool portfolios. They want to see your cool projects. They want to talk to young, up-and-coming, aspiring architects and interns who, especially if you're working for a licensed architect and not a developer or, somebody who is a little bit further removed from the architecture firm. But if, let's say, you're talking to an actual licensed architect and you're going to work for a private corporation or an actual architecture company, the cool thing is for the architect, the owner of the firm, to reminisce about architecture school. They want to see your cool portfolio. They want to see all that. Where you can really go into an interview and make an impact on your boss is when your boss understands that you understand how you can make them money. That is where they're going to be like, oh, wow, this person can have really cool stuff, but also really knows how to make me money. Turn out drawings, turn out construction drawings, make real stuff. And it's what architecture school is specifically not focusing on, especially if you're going to an artsy type of school. My school was super artsy. I didn't know that going into it. Which is why I was so fish out of water and blindsided when I got into an office. I thought that I was learning real architecture, but I was specifically learning fake architecture on the contrary. So that's what we focus on in classes, like real architecture, real details, real wall sections, real structure, real AutoCAD, real techniques, and things that make you actually faster, more efficient, more accurate at churning out construction drawings like a machine.
I agree. And I think listening to what you were saying, I started thinking about like my work and what I do, and I'm a sole proprietor. And guess what? Like, for anybody listening who's like worried about like how good are my renderings and stuff, and like I have to have that be really good. I think you're going to get phased out by AI. I'm sorry, because that's what I do. I'm a sole practitioner. I have started to dabble in some of the AI renderings where I will build my design in SketchUp and put it into an AI software, tell it what to do. And guess what? In 10 seconds, I have 3 options. That did not cost me anything. And so you can stress about how good your renderings are going to look, but AI is going to jump over you in that skill set. And architecture firms, like for me, I'm never going to look at someone's rendering skills, because by the time if I do hire someone, I can always have that go out to AI. So it doesn't matter that you can do a really cool rendering, because I'm not going to charge my client X amount of hours for you to get it done when I know efficiently I can have AI, give me 3 examples in under a minute. So it's like going back to your point of what can make me money. That's great that you're rendering. I'm just thinking about, with my business hat on, as I was listening to you and just thinking about it, like, I wouldn't look at someone's renderings. I would look at, the productivity. How can you put together a construction set? So I use AutoCAD as well. And also, you got to plug it. You are like the AutoCAD queen. We just have to share that, by the way, because I'll like message you about something, like freaking out. I'll be like, and there was something I recently, but I ended up figuring it out because I was like, no, because I was just like, I got to figure this out. But I reached out to you because I was like, got to cover my bases. I don't know when she'll be available. And like, there's just so much. But one thing you've also brought up a lot is becoming the master at your tool. And you have stayed with AutoCAD. There's so many programs like Revit, ArchiCAD, Eclipse, not Eclipse, Inkscape. Like there's so many things out there. And I think that can also be intimidating for students like coming in, because it's like, oh my gosh, I have to know all this software. At the end of the day, you don't. You really just have to know the software that your firm is working in. And I think that also can be something that you look at when you're looking at firms to work at.
Yeah, and it's something that I personally look at for firms. I've been in the field for a few years now, obviously, and I've been approached by other firms, and I've turned other firms down that don't work in AutoCAD, because that is where my strength is. Mm-hmm. And it's what I've been in for, at this point, 10 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I went to architecture school in 2014. So it's what I've been in for 10 years. Mm-hmm. It's what I have completely mastered. There is nothing about AutoCAD that intimidates me anymore. I know that I can solve any problem that comes up. I know terminology, which is a huge thing. And that's something that I go through in my class all the time, is what things are actually called. And it's so funny that we're having this conversation, because this mm-hmm. literally just happened to me 2 hours in the office. And my coworker was like, I couldn't Google it because I didn't know what it was called. Yeah. So we talk about that. We talk about what, it's computer language, it's AutoCAD mm-hmm. language. Sometimes you can't fix your problem because you don't actually know what your problem is. I mean, talk about that as like an overarching theme for this entire conversation. Mm-hmm. But I feel so strongly that AutoCAD is the tool for architects. It was literally designed as digital hand drawing. And if you are not to get like super real and raw, but that's how I am. If you are trying to be a real architects hand draw. Real architects understand things through drawing, just like a mathematician. I had this analogy come up in my head the other day, and I was like, oh my goodness, just trying to explain really what I do basically to my mom, because my mom just kind of doesn't understand what I do. So I said, think about like a mathematician. And a lot of people will say, well, it's just a box. It's just a warehouse. It shouldn't take you that long. Like, why is it taking you that long? I could do it, basically. And it will literally be this average Joe off the street. And I'm like, all right, then do it if you can do it. Mm-hmm. What architects do, what we essentially do, is just like a mathematician has algebra and all these equations on the board and actually goes through and writes them out so that they can solve the problem. That's what drawing is for architects. We're not just drawing because we see something out there and we're verbatim translating that to paper or to the digital space of AutoCAD, which is just digital paper. We're actually solving problems through drawing, which is why I have an issue with 3D programs, because the 3D program is the thing that is then solving the problem for you, instead of your own brain as an architect thinking through in space what you're actually drawing. So this is why I push, okay, if you want to go into the 3D programs, that's not my realm. I don't believe in them, but fine. In 10 years, when you have a good handle on AutoCAD and on architecture as a practice, go off. But for now, let's take the time to actually draw it and think through it and do it in 2D and have your brain do the 3D space thinking instead of the program do that thinking for you, because you're not going to learn architecture as a holistic practice if you're giving up that bargaining chip of your own brain thinking to Revit, to SketchUp, to all these other programs, which, to your point, are going to be phased out by AI anyway. And the thing that is then going to come back and be the most valuable is the human brain that can take into all these other considerations, all these conversations that you have with construction managers when you're in the meeting. Revit's not in the meeting with you. You didn't know that the client is going to want a breezeway in that location that right now is being built as just, a portico. You don't know the provision for what could come in the future, and programs are not in those meetings with you. The human brain is in those meetings with you, and the human brain is meant to problem solve and think ahead. So when you can pair that with actual knowledge about architecture, instead of giving that up to 3D programs, now when you sit down for your interview, for your annual review with your boss, you have real bargaining chips to actually get those raises and negotiate yourself and show your worth in an office.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with everything that you just said, because it's a lot of that 3D software will be phased out, I think, by AI, and then we just talked about it. And have you noticed, do students still hand draft?
No.
Anything?
No,
nothing.
No.
Not even a sketch class?
Nope, I don't see anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's part of the reason why I have played with the idea, and I don't really know how this is going to play out. So if anybody has any suggestions for me, please offer them. In order to teach the method of drafting that I use, it is hand drawing. And so it's a little bit difficult to teach that especially when I know someone has never hand drawn. So I've considered kind of having like a whiteboard with trace paper that I can put up and show, like you came to my class where I was a little bit explaining the spline method, and show what it looks like to actually mirror things across 45-degree angles and drag projection lines down. Because when I say those things, again, talk about terminology, a lot of students don't understand what I mean by that when it is basic hand drawing. And then, so to understand how AutoCAD works and how you can be better at drafting, you have to understand how to do that in hand drawing. So I think that there's real merit to be had in teaching students how to just basic hand draw. By no means am I like a hand drawer. I'm not very good at drawing, but I understand how to project lines.
Yeah. No, I think the hand sketching is slowly becoming a lost art. I know there's a few people I've had on the podcast, Salman, who talks about, we talked about hand sketching, and it's like the foundation of architecture. It's how you get your brain, like you were saying already, in the 2D. You work from the 2D into the 3D.
And similar, so for example, my boss exclusively hand draws. Everything he designs, and he's a genius, everything he designs is by hand. And then our job is to this is the thing that makes my boss money and most other bosses money, is being able to translate his designs into real construction documents. And so when they all come from, because he really understands architecture, he really goes through and hand draws and sketches and actually comes up with real designs. And then I'm going to diverge a little bit, but comes up with real designs. And then in our office, we have one renderer.
There you have it.
We have one. That's it.
Yeah.
And he, quick and fast does things just so that we can kind of get ideas, which then get passed down the line and say, okay, this is the approved rendering, make that a construction document. And if you have a good renderer, they will very easily offer up this information. And so I appreciate when someone who does have a handle on their rendering craft can admit this very easily. The rendering is fake. When they render, it's well, I just did that hard and fast, and I don't really know exactly what that or how that gets constructed. It's just kind of what was approved, and that's the design intent. You got to translate that into real construction.
Right, because gravity doesn't exist in those programs.
Exactly. Gravity doesn't exist. Nothing does. Structure doesn't. And so to your point, you make an amazing point. I've never heard that before. Yes, they're going to get phased out by AI, number one. And number two, they're a dime a dozen. Everyone can render. Anyone can go and be a good renderer. Anyone can be good at Photoshop. The thing that is going to become really rare is being able to translate that into construction documents.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Krista, it was such a pleasure having you on From the Honeycomb again. And I think just back and forth, just this talking, it's been really interesting hearing from your perspective what you're seeing the new generations coming up with and like the struggles that they're having and what their hopes and desires are for, their careers in architecture, which sounds like it's, learning about renderings. But I think at the conclusion of this, I think we're going to say AI is going to phase that out. But anyway, I loved having you on. I always love your perspective and connecting with you. So thank you for taking the time to come on.
Thank you so much for having me. And likewise, I love hearing the things that you have to say. And it's so interesting to see, you're the one that we can be asking these questions to. Like, who will you be hiring next? What's going to be beneficial to you as the sole proprietor, as someone who these students will be coming to look for a job. So I love getting that perspective. It's such a compliment to my way of thinking as well. So it's been an honor and a pleasure as always. And I love being here. This is my favorite place to come and chat.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And where can listeners find you?
So you can find me best on Instagram. It's kmarco.mkr, kmarco.maker. I put all my links on there. I understand not everyone is on Instagram. I have made a little bit of a switch over to YouTube. Nice. My handle is the same there, but instead of a period, it is a hyphen. But if you're looking for the links, then definitely come find me on Instagram and you can keep up to date there. I have class on Saturdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So the link for the registration is always there for my Instagram.
Perfect. I'll provide everything in the show notes. Krista, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of From the Honeycomb podcast. As we conclude, I want to express my gratitude for joining me in today's episode. I hope you have found it insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and click that like button so you never miss an episode. And don't forget to share this with your friends. You can follow me on Instagram at From the Honeycomb Podcast, and you can also further your support of From the Honeycomb by visiting the Patreon link provided in the show notes. Your contribution helps make more episodes possible. And lastly, don't forget to subscribe to my monthly newsletter, A Spark of Positive Energy, that comes out on the 7th of each month. Thank you so much, and see you next Friday.